Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that means it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. So, perhaps unsurprisingly, I am on the road this week, as you might have been able to tell. This is not my normal location. So, we're doing the wonderful cell phone thing again. So, hey, there you go. Still better than my actual computer. How fun is that? But happy Valentine's Day, everybody. So, in proof that Tom and I have both been married a long time and that we have dedication to this, we're still here doing the show. I'm both traveling and doing this show, so really it was free for me. I mean, it's not like I was going to hang out with my wife, so there we go.
My wife is upstairs. And she wished me luck with my spouse.
There you go. Absolutely, yeah. Well, I'm glad she knows where your heart truly lies. Here Indeed. With us, with me. That's what I want. I need that level of dedication, Tom. All right. I'm very needy. It's like Fatal Attraction. It's that sort of thing. So we're going to break down Legions of Nagash tonight. We're going to talk about our impressions of it. As usual, we've had the book for like 4 days. So if we get a few things wrong, sorry, out of the gate. If we don't make every prediction exactly correct of what's going to be good, that's not surprising.
I have a pretty good feel for it.
All right, you've got a good sense of what's going to be good with the Legions of Nagash. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so.
You've cracked the code. All right, well there you go. You heard it here first. I'm openly going to admit, as per usual, my ignorance. But look, if you're writing lists, Tom already wrote them for you. So I mean, we all know that's what it's going to be.
There was a quite humorous thing this last weekend where somebody was complaining about lists, and I said, "Hey, try this," and somebody said, "Of course, Tom has already written my list." Like it was a list they were taking that week, that to the event this last weekend, literally, and yeah. So, oops, sorry, Sean.
All right, but of course, first we've got some news. So, Tom, take it away, buddy. What do we got?
Yeah, let's jump right into the rumor engine. Here, let me pull that up because Vince is not in a place to be able to do that.
Shockingly, the cell phone doesn't really, switch too well.
No, not at all. So this showed up. So elves, right?
Yeah, clearly.
No,
clearly elves.
As like when this went up on the website, like very soon after it went up on the thread on Facebook, I was like, oh look, it's another piece of Sector Mechanicus terrain. For those of you that don't know, I spent a lot of time painting the Sector Mechanicus terrain back in October, and for my KO board, and there are a set of these clocks underneath the leg struts as one of the optional clocks. It's the reason why I know this is like in choosing which legs were outward facing, I wanted to have the clock outward facing. And so I'm very aware it's not identical to this, but it's nearly identical to this. Which would suggest that I think another piece of terrain is probably coming.
Yeah, I mean, I actually completely agree with you here for a couple reasons. One, yes, you're completely right. Like, I haven't stared at that as much as you have, but I've stared at it enough.
Yes.
Two, if you look at this, you can see, given how zoomed in this is, you can see like
It's
the quality of it's the softer plastic that the terrain is made of. Exactly.
Yeah, and the other reason why it's new is that this arm is a new arm.
Yeah.
The fat L arm. Like that's
it's going to be some
thing.
kind of expansion piece, right?
Yes.
Like much like the thermo something regulators that came out at the end of the year last year. Like it's just another piece to kind of add on to that. That thing has been like an incredibly popular terrain set, and for obvious reasons. It's it's.
I have a whole box of because I bitted it out and building stuff.
Yep.
And I have just like boxes of it that I still need to finish like snipping and sorting. But I will probably likely buy more. Like it is a great set of terrain.
Yeah, and it's also useful for Necromunda as well, right? So it's not only is it good for 40K boards, but it's also like excellent Gang War Necromunda terrain. My particular guess is they'll probably release this in time with, I think this is actually a very close rumor engine, simply because I think the way that because the terrain isn't, as I understand it, the terrain is the one thing not made in the UK, like not
Right.
printed or whatever in the UK. So because of that, it's made in China, and so when they get these molds, they have to like do it way in advance. And so if we get an image like this, it's already been made and probably to a high degree. They can't just run like a single sculpt or something quicker like they can in the UK.
Yeah, they have boxes of this sitting somewhere.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this will come out with Gang War 2, right? It would make sense. Which or even if not with Gang War 2, which is actually really close, pretty close on the heels of that, right? So, yep, that's my thoughts.
Indeed.
You know, Tom, it's funny because I was looking back through the rumor engines.
Yeah.
And I learned something this last weekend that they go back and update the articles.
Oh, yeah. That's what you said.
Yeah. So, like, you know, on the rumor engine article on the community page, when it's revealed what model it is, they actually go in and update it and say, like, update, this was revealed to be part of the blah, blah, blah kit or whatever. Now, I did find a couple that they haven't updated properly, but for the most part, they're updated. But nice. In looking through that list, what shocked me is there are still so many that we have no idea what they are. Like a crazy number. Like, especially all the stuff at the end of last year and leading into the beginning of this year. Yeah. I would say like 30% of the rumor engines are still unsolved, maybe 25, 30%. That's crazy when you think about how many that actually amounts to.
Pretty awesome.
Right? Yeah, I mean, what it tells me is we have a lot of new models coming in the next couple months. Like, they were definitely behind the 8 ball on production at the end of last year.
Right.
Because it's obvious they had a bunch of like individual minis to do the rumor engines and then weren't able to meet what they wanted to produce at the end of the year. Right.
This stuff's been kind of just piling up.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right. What else we got?
Today a Valentine's video dropped and boy, was it spectacular. It was a nice little fairy tale of a knight looking for a princess. He found one and she took more than his ring that he offered. It was very reminiscent of, for those, for, you know, our frequent viewers of the show, Vince, a couple, last month when this dropped, said, hey, I want, you know, like, come on, people, meme this up with all these Daughters of Cain holding hearts and stuff like that for Valentine's Day. And Chuck, one of the community folks here in the U.S., was like, I'm on it. And did a bunch of memes, and then suddenly GW was like, I'm on it, and did this video. And for Valentine's Day, they offered us this delightful Valentine's Day gift, which was the final image.
Yeah, that's such a sweet piece of art. That is just fantastic. Marathi and her snake form.
This is probably Marathi.
You think? You've managed to clue in.
I cracked the code.
Absolutely. Let me tell you what I'm
reason why, by the way, as an aside, the reason why I say that is that we have not seen any other Medusa with wings.
Or with Marathi's spear, or Marathi's headdress, or, you know, Marathi. Yeah. Like, look, do you know why I was the most happy to see this little art image? Other than the fact it's a gorgeous image.
Why is that?
Like, because there were still people who, after the Daughters of Cain video, were like, maybe it's not Marathi. Maybe it's Mullerian or blah, 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 blah. Other things. And I'm like, no, it's Marathi. Like, for 10 reasons, it's Marathi. And then this finally should hopefully put it to rest. Like, I feel like I need to actually hit them with the model to get them to accept that that was Marathi. So I grow ever more excited to see the full model. So there you go.
Agreed. And I'm fully on board. Like, I'm really I'm going to be in an interesting standstill. I have a number of things that I need to paint for Adepticon, leading in for my small form, like short form, to the 1,000 point lists. And then once I get that painted, I'll need to figure out what the next step is. I have Custodes that I need to paint. I have some Stormcasts that I'd like to paint. And I have some, and then I need to figure out if I want to dive into my daughters. So I'm not sure kind of where to kind of start.
I mean, look, man, your deadline's November. You know that. I know that. So there you go.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously they'll be done by November, but again, even 1,500 points of sisters, like, I mean, yeah, that's going to be some witches. There's no, there'll be 1 or 2 blocks of witches, but the reality is that like there's going to be a bunch of bow hydra chicks and all that other stuff. So,
Yep.
and all of those will go pretty quick, I think. So,
I already got one Medusa down, man. I'm excited.
I know you do. I know you do. Cool. Well, so that is our news, Marathi. A great picture. I am totally in. Kind of related to our news for this week, or our topic actually for this week. The GW recently did a fluff talk.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, sure. So last Thursday, I guess it was, they did a big sort of kind of a deep dive on like the fluff of Shaiish and death and sort of, everything in the Legions of Nagash background. And there was a lot of cool stuff that was in there that they mentioned. So like they talked about the background of Prince Vorderai, however you say his name, the new special character that got added, and how he was like imprisoned in this like mobile keep and stuff, but now he gets out kind of on a leash. They talked about they gave the background to like the realm itself, and talked about how it contains the underworlds and afterlives for every other realm. Right, like all the other belief systems, their afterlives are there. So, kind of how whatever they believe you go to when you die, there's some version of it in Shaiish. They talked about how like the living live in like the center part of the realm, and as you get towards the edges of the infinity, it becomes more full of like potent raw death magic, and that's where they like harvest a lot of this. Nagash is pulling a lot of stuff from. Living people can't go there. It was just a lot of cool little stuff. There's a little throwaway line. They kind of talked about Slaanesh a little bit, and there's a nice throwaway thing in the new books, which we're not going to talk about. To be very clear, we're not going to talk about Malign Portents tonight. We're going to talk about Legions of Nagash. We will talk about the Malign Portents supplement in the future. I couldn't read 2 books this weekend end to end. But they did show
Vince.
like, yeah, seriously, I need to stop slacking. But they showed how like they talked about Slaanesh being in prison and gave you a little window into Slaanesh's mind. And they talk more about Slaanesh and the nature of the Dark Princess sort of gorging herself on elvish souls and then becoming vulnerable, and like the Chaos Gods' foresight of a world where Nagash wins. They talked about that, like how even though the Chaos Gods are so very powerful, that there is a world where Nagash wins, because if he kills every living being and turns them into undead, he robs the Chaos Gods basically of their power, because their powers are sort of driven by emotion.
Yep.
Right. And there's when it's just all unfeeling dead people, like in a universe of just basically skeletons, that's it. There is no more chaos. It's perfect order. Right. So, and as Slaanesh points out, very, very, very dull.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if like Malign Portents might be an opportunity for them to knock chaos down a peg permanently. And what I mean by that is like if we get some mass like death action, like I'm talking like entire mortal realms consumed into undeath. Like I wonder if that's what they use to basically move death into as a major player, and to knock chaos down a peg.
I mean, I don't know. Sure. I mean, what I'll say is traditionally the best, to be sort of sideways about this, the best MMOs have 3 realms.
Yeah. No, indeed. Right? Indeed.
Because then it's not just A against B forever. And because that's a 0-sum game. Right. Yep. And when you've got 3 people, that's not the case anymore. Suddenly alliances shift and break, and it's just a lot more interesting. As someone who regularly plays 3-player multiplayer Warhammer games almost every week, I will say that it's a much different game when you've got 3 people on the table.
There's some very subtle maneuvering and politics that have to happen in that type of environment.
Yeah. So I mean, I would welcome it. Sure. Like, elevate him to that level, make him that much of an existential threat. It makes sense within the greater metaphysical construct of the Warhammer world. That is to say, you know, you have like the living people who are interested in order. You have basically the end of everything, the null set, right? And then the thing that opposes all of that, which is just raw chaos spilling over, right?
Yep.
Both order and death have very different reasons. Everybody has different reasons for not wanting to join the other two.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Like, they're each philosophically opposed in a nice triangle. So no, I would think that'd be great. I'd love to see
it'll be interesting.
A triumvirate.
It'll be interesting to see if they can crack the code on destruction, to see where they kind of fit, or if are they always just perpetually the spoiler.
Yeah, I mean, it would put them in a position where they are just like lesser in the narrative. Yeah.
If you have a triangle, they occupy the center of that triangle.
Sure. You know, I saw somebody mention in the comments that order better come down a peg too. Well, I mean, sure, it naturally would just through the story. But what I would say is, like, the Chaos Gods are and always have been the great threat, right? Like, they are always more powerful than everyone else. Even when Sigmar and like everybody combined, they pushed Chaos back, but they didn't destroy them. Right. They managed to hold them at bay for some amount of time until like one of them screwed up, which was Nagash. And they talked about that some too. And then all of a sudden, everything falls apart and chaos is back in a heartbeat, right? So they're kind of always there. Order is always, the living are always holding on by a thread, as it were, right? So, yeah, cool. I'm down. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I hope that it's you know, let me say it this way. I hope that death does become an existential threat to chaos, even more so than order.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to put chaos on like a 2-front war, right? Where they're fighting both the living people who are sort of, you know, naturally opposed because they like to keep living basically safe lives, not being full of madness and hate and disease. But then also you have death that wants to see all of this buffoonery end.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, Nagash is very power driven. They talked about that. One of my favorite little comments, by the way, in the fluff talk was when somebody had sort of asked a question, or they had discussed, how does Nagash feel about Manfred? Right? Because as we all know, Manfred is the reason the old world ended. Like, that's true. Okay. Yep. He was the final betrayal. Without Manfred's actions, the old world would have been saved.
Yep.
So there you go. So as usual, Manfred is the bad guy and never to be trusted.
Hashtag damn it.
Asked me, exactly. Somebody asked me what I did recently with my Mortar kit when I built it. I said I built it magnetized so I could switch Archon and Ephrata, and I took Manfred and threw him in the garbage where he belongs.
Yeah.
So, but at any rate, their response was funny because it's like their response was basically like, well, Nagash isn't emotional like the Chaos Gods or like Sigmar. He doesn't care. He doesn't hold grudges in that way. Like, he's not whatever. It's fine. He's just, Manfred's a tool to be used like anything else, and if he's useful at this point, then he'll keep using him. Well, he's like he's an I'm over it type of thing. It's not that he's not. It's that he doesn't have time to get angry about it because he's already he's already well past it and more powerful than he ever was in the old world.
Yeah, what I would say is that they did say that like the Nagash is like a megalomaniac. Yeah, like of the highest order.
Mm-hmm. One of his tools got squirrely, but that tool is still useful, so he doesn't care. Right? He's like this. He's a calculation engine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he did the math. Manfred still has enough utils to be valuable, so you're fine. You get the pass.
Yep. Right. Well, talking about disrupting power, that happened today in our match play world. as the Mourngol scroll was updated. The Forge World Mourngol scroll is updated. So for those that already have downloaded it in the app, the old one, make sure you delete it and download the new one. Of significance with the Mourngol adjustment, it was a downward power adjustment. He dropped 50 points, but most significantly, he dropped the ability to shake off mortal wounds. So his raw mortal wounds ward save has disappeared. He lost the ability to be summoned. So there's no, and he does not have the summoning keyword, which means that he cannot be included in any of the Legions of Nagash armies. Basically only generic death or only Night Haunt, which is pretty significant, because that is really going to restrict the Mourngol's utility. And then, but he did actually keep, interestingly enough, he kept the old rend immunity rather than picking up the new ethereal wording. So he's not restricted. He can still get in bonuses to his save. So he can still be a 2-up base save. So I suspect people will only generally see him in Night Haunt armies from here on out, if I were to take a guess.
Sure. I mean, it's interesting because I actually played a game against Death a couple weeks back, right, when the new scrolls had went in.
Yeah.
And we actually used the new ethereal rule for everything he had that had it, including the Mourngol. He had a Mourngol in his army. And so we thought, oh, this is probably going to get updated. It just didn't get a new scroll yet. I mean, we were right. It did get updated. But so we played under the new ethereal rule, right, and gave it to the Mourngol. And I will say, he got bowled over, right? Even with his mortal wound shield still, he just got plowed because, basically when he's stuck at a straight 3-up, yeah, he's tough.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. An unrendable 3-up is no joke. But still, things will go through him.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he can still get to a 2-up and be, it's a big difference. The difference in the world between 2-up and 3-up is no joke. But the lack of the mortal wound protection, I like that, honestly. I think I like this new change. 50 points cheaper. It's good. He's he has a clear weakness now, right? Mm-hmm. Not that his old 5-up was bulletproof or something, but he has a clear weakness, so there is a way to remove him. But he can be outrageously tough, right? Against things that don't have mortal wound capability. So yeah. I think he, at that point cost, I feel like he has a good role to play in a Night Haunt or General Death force, which I think you'll still see some General Death around here or there. Yeah. So maybe we'll talk about it.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Talking about other disruptions, we had another disruption in the lore, as it appears as if Go Trek is returning in a four-part audio series that's coming out later this year. Big announcements went out for that. It seems like he is going to come through the realm of chaos unscathed into the Age of Sigmar and have to process what the world looks like, what the world is now. I think it'll be a really interesting opportunity for GW to have kind of a first-person, perspective as you have a character stepping into the Age of Sigmar as kind of a blank slate with no experience, and so it'll be potentially a good introduction to the world itself through his eyes. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Felix is long dead from what we can tell. So, yeah. Thoughts, Vince?
It's the return of a fan favorite character.
Yeah.
Right? People loved this dude. And they didn't make any mention of as you said, of Felix directly, but there was the rumor he could be a Stormcast or whatever. I kind of hope he's dead. I mentioned this to you before the show. Seriously, I don't want him to come back. We don't just need to slowly re-import everybody. I'm cool with some people coming back. Through chaos and through the timey-wimey weirdness of chaos, anything can happen. So it's fine. But at the same time, I also don't just want to rely on the crutch of a lot of special characters from the old world. We already have all of our old special characters risen up and becoming gods. Sigmar and Nagash and Alariel and eventually Tyrion and Malarian and Teclis and everybody. They're all going to be gods, right?
Right.
Like this is, by the time we're done with this little journey, we're going to have, they are the new pantheon, just as the Ronodondra predicted, right?
So are you saying that Gotrek is Grimnir?
No, I'm not. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I also want to see really good new special characters and new interesting protagonists fill the stories, right?
Yep.
You know, like there was a time when Gotrek didn't exist, and then somebody wrote him, and he caught on.
Yeah.
And you can't predict that. You've just got to write a lot of stories with a lot of new characters, and one of them will catch. It's survivor's bias, right? Like how many special characters have been in Warhammer books over the years that nobody remembers or gives a flying hoot about?
Yep.
Okay. It's, you know, the people on the bottom of the ocean prayed to. So, you know, you've just got to basically write interesting and compelling characters, and one of them will catch in the consciousness.
Yep.
So I want to see that too, but I'm not opposed. I like Gotrek coming back. My hashtag unpopular opinion is I hope Felix is dead and he never comes back. And as I said before, I think pair Gotrek with other interesting people in the realm.
Sure.
Have him partner up with not one constant person. Don't give him a constant sidekick like he had with Felix. Have him have a rotating cast of characters and use him to introduce the realm. We talked about this with our like fluff book idea of, you know, sort of like our kind of Volo's Guide to the Mortal Realms type of thing, but make it Gotrek's Guide to the Mortal Realms and have Gotrek run around and partner up with people.
And kill stuff and
Yeah. He's certainly capable, right? But yet he's still not, he needs to not be like Sigmar or Nagash or somebody like that, right? He has to still be in awe. Awe is maybe the wrong word, but you know what I mean? Like these greater powers need to be beyond him.
Yeah, he needs to be experiencing the world.
Yes.
Yeah. And inviting
he's
into that.
Yeah, he's competent but can be endangered, right?
Yep.
He is not an immortal being who can Nagash is, you know, next to unkillable at this point. Like Archaon beat him and smote him, and he just put himself back together. You know, like these kind of characters, they're fine. They're good to have in a story, and it's neat to get a more humanistic Greek godlike point of view with them.
Yeah.
But they're not our protagonists.
Yeah, and they're not who we relate to.
Right.
Yep. Other stuff that is happening. GW released a community article this last week that is well worth your everyone's time to check out. We'll have it in the links below. Maybe this should have been one of our pick of the weeks. But it is a community article on sportsmanship. And we briefly kind of bumped into this story right after LVO. We didn't really cover it real closely. But basically, some people played, an individual played in a very cutthroat manner and used some rules technicalities and some order of operations stuff to basically force somebody to end one of their phases and move on and stuff like that. And the guy that it happened to was super cool about it. Super chill, and basically accepted the situation and forged on, even though he ended up losing the game. And there was potentially, as it being in the semifinals, there was money on the line, you know, at the end of the whole thing. And one of the individuals that was watching it all live on the stream saw how he played. It was actually one of the co-founders of League of Legends, and was super impressed by the sportsmanship, you know, displayed, and offered the dude a $5,000 reward, or a $5,000 honor for his sportsmanship. That was donated, or then the individual said, you know, I'm not going to take that, but donate it to a children's hospital. Anyway, so it's the tale of how not only that happened, which we had known, but then what's happened since then, as people have matched it, and just all this, a bunch of awesome. So I'm gonna direct you to the community article, and you can check it out. It's well worth a read.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I want you to, so people watching this, I want you to seriously ask yourself a question of whether, with thousands of dollars on the line in a game of Warhammer, and you feel that someone's playing you in a pretty dirty fashion, like you're staring down some dirty pool, that you could keep your cool and be a really good guy with sports. Could you do that? I'm not sure I could. like straight talk, I think I'd probably be very upset and act like a not nice person. And then on top of that, somebody like seriously, like I'm honest enough with myself to know that I sometimes get in a funk. We all like this dude went above and beyond. And then someone throws $5,000 at you. Okay. And you go
more than the original reward, by the way. Like for the winning tournament was only 4, I believe.
I don't remember how much it was, but yes, it was a lot of money. $5,000 is a lot of money, folks. Like I don't if there's somebody out there who thinks that's not a lot of money, I congratulate you on your success in life. But the reality is to then go, no, I would rather that go to charity. And then to have that matched and then by his employer or whatever, and then GW matched it. That is a hobby hero.
Thanks for spoiling the ending.
Look, whatever, it's fine. You should still read it because it goes into detail. And the reality is it's everything we should all aspire to be, right? When we play this game. It's the sort of highest paradigm of the community, of the sportsmanship, of everything that makes this game great. So kudos to that individual for being a better person than me. That's what I'll say. No doubt in my mind. So totally awesome. And I think the other, important note there that the article talks about, since we started spoiling it, let's just go all the way.
Yeah.
Is that they're gonna sports recognition sort of program, more details to come this summer.
GW is going to implement some type of intentional reward for sportsmanship. So, which is awesome. Kudos. Good job, GWs. And then finally, Warhammer Fest tickets are going on sale soon. So, yeah, pay attention. Warhammer Fest going on sale soon.
Hey, yeah, absolutely. It's going to be an exciting one. I'm trying to figure out if I can get over there somehow. I'll tell you about that honestly. I want to see if I can get over there, but I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be that's a tough flight, but I'd like to make it over there. So, Tom, what's your pick of the week, buddy?
Well, thanks for ruining that. I'm actually gonna go with Chuck, who we had referenced some of his Valentine's, this being Valentine's Day. We'd reference his memes. We'll link to his post where he has put up all of those images of the Valentine's Day Daughters of Cain memes. So you have something that you can send all your friends.
What I love about that is that you stole my pick of the week as well. That's what's hilarious about that. So there you go. You got me back, Tom. How about that? That's very funny. Yes, he had made those memes, and they're great. They're absolutely great. So instead, that's no problem. I have a different pick of the week, actually, that I've been meaning to share over and over again, but have forgotten. So I will share it now. That is that. So on the Hobby Hangout YouTube channel, which is a YouTube channel run by the Facebook group for Caleb Wissenbach and Kat Jackson, CK Studios. I host a biweekly hobby live hangout / tutorial thing. I'll be doing it again this weekend. I'll link the channel down below. Not to what, if you come and watch my video on Saturdays, hey, awesome. I mean, they're there. They're stored just like on any YouTube channel. So you can go back and watch anytime. If you want even more of me rambling about hobby cheating techniques to fill your time, well, here's your way too. But specifically, I pointed out because Caleb also does a lot of hobby tutorials on there in Hangouts. And Caleb is one of the best teachers in the world on the airbrush. He does a lot of different airbrush tutorials. And he's just in there explaining it, showing it to you in real time in a Hangout. I get a lot of questions from people about airbrush stuff. And I see on Facebook almost every day, somebody's like, I just bought an airbrush. I need to know help. I want any kind of instruction. Well, here's a whole channel with a lot of videos all about that. So check it out. There you go. And like I said, I have mine coming this Saturday. I think Caleb has a new one going up tonight. He'll be teaching at Adepticon. So there you go. On that note,
already probably sold out though.
I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's true. On On a side note, for teaching, I confirmed this week that I'll be teaching at Nova as well. So I'll be teaching. All my classes at Adepticon are sold out, but I'll be teaching at Gen Con and Nova as well. Also, if you're going to Adepticon and you wanted to take a class with me, but it's sold out, or you're going to be there and you wanted to learn more stuff, they're putting in a new track for like an intensive learning track. It'll only be like 4 people in the class, so they'll be very small. They're going to go up here soon. I think I'm doing 2 or 3 the whole weekend. I don't even remember the schedule. I'll share the link probably on my Twitter and everything when it goes out. But if you were looking for a more like intense class, probably around things like blends and skin tones and stuff like that, there's a couple different topics I'm going to cover. And you fancy spending like 3 to 4 hours in a room with me, hey, there you go. Now you can. So that'll be, it's a little bit different class. Yeah, this will be at Adepticon, correct.
Good.
So it'll be a chance for people to do, even the normal class is only like 12 or 16 people, so they're not huge, but this is much more, it's a longer class. It's much more focused on a more complex technique, and we're going to do everything there in real time. Okay, so you're going to do it with me. I'm there to answer your questions, and when you leave, hopefully you've taken a step or at least understand where you need to go. So there you go. Like I said, the announcement for that will be going up soon. It's not just me that's doing these classes. I think many of the teachers there are going to have them. So watch for that, because it's sort of a last minute addition. This is the first year they're trying it out. I would love it to be a success because I think it's a really good idea. So there you go. There's that. All right, Tommy, let's talk about some hobby time, brother. What you working on, man?
Ooh, I'm so close. I am so close. I am on the last set of Skywardens. I'm doing highlights and glazes now. All the base stuff is done. All the washing is done. Finished highlighting another one of my characters. So I have like these 6. I have a handful of dudes left to do, and then I have to go in and do like some lighting stuff on my Fire Slayers, like some rune glow effects on the Fire Slayers. For the Volkites, which won't be bad. I have to go in and do like I'm gonna do glowing eyes for all of them. I need to do some glowing runes on banners and ships and stuff like that. But other than that, like I am almost there. And it's so funny because like I'm almost there and I'm immediately have a painting queue for the next month. So because I have a number of lists that I'm gonna take that I don't have everything fully painted for Adepticon. And so I'm in a number of in a handful of 1,000-point games, both the 2 half-day 1,000-point events, and then also the full team 1,000-point event. And I'm taking different lists for every single one. So I wanted to take just a whole gamut of different lists, different allegiances, stuff like that. And so I'm doing some touch up on those to finish get those lists fully painted.
Nice. I was thinking about whether or not I'm going to bring like just a 1,000-point list to Adepticon, so I can play people at like midnight or something, like in the just in the room or on one of the free tables, like after everybody's gone, because I will not have a chance to play in any of the games,
right?
Because of teaching and stuff like that. So I'll probably bring like 1,000 points of my Iron Jaws or something, just have a few fun games and unwind late at night. So if you're interested.
Yeah, we can do some triumph and treachery stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Stuff like that would be fun. Nothing serious, obviously. It's just to unwind, because I feel like it'd be a shame to go there and not get a game in. That seems
it's not like I'm doing 4 full days of full day AOS events, but sure.
Yeah, absolutely. As to my hobby time, like obviously today I'm not doing much. I did bring this with me. Sorry, I had to reach around here. The book I didn't get to read yet. I've got this with me today. Nice. So I have some reading for my trip, and when I'm sitting around in airports and whatever. I really like this book a lot. I think it's super cool. Like the art and all the stuff is really great. I like all the little interesting battle plans. It's a very different sort of way to play. I don't think it's super match play thing, but I think it's super fun. I like stuff like this, campaign supplement stuff. So that stuff gets used a lot at my table, so I was pretty excited to see it. I did get to stare down my own bad medicine this last weekend.
Oh,
As as my friend took my like Lord Auditor list and ran it in a game.
thanks, Kevin.
And
Good job.
yeah, absolutely. It wasn't the full list because we were only playing 1,500 piece, but his first turn, he got like the Greywater Fastness 6 off on his Hellstorm rocket battery, and so fine. So like he at the top one, he fired the Hellstorm like 3 times. Yeah, it was a fun game. So that was a good time. Hobby wise, I've been in an absolute maelstrom, dude. That's completely like, hashtag real talk. I've been working on my display board for Holy Wars.
How's that going for you?
Fine. I started it way back, so I'm just doing steps. A thing is drying right now. Like I'm at this hotel thousands of miles away, and I made sure to set a whole bunch of stuff up that needed like at least 24 hours of dry time. So that's happening right now.
Yep.
And I'll have it ready. This curse, this pox, this sword of Damocles that hangs over my head, this absolute waste of my time, energy, and effort will be ready to go. But that's fine. I'm also working on the Raging Heroes Avatar of Shaish, a little keeper of secrets. I felt like painting that up. I don't know why. I got it out, put it together, and just started going to work. I felt like playing with oil paints, so I'm doing a lot of her in oils just to play around with that.
Yeah.
And then I'm also like, I was assembling and kit bashing out all of the Greywater Fastness speed army that I'm going to do as part of like a hobby cheating series where I paint 2,000 points in a week. So like I was putting together the steam tanks, putting together the converted Huracanum and stuff like that to get that army ready and primed to go. So a lot of different things, a lot of irons and a lot of fires. And then what I need to do when I get back is I'll finish up the Avatar, and then it's time to turn to my last. What I'll probably be talking about next week is my last project for my last competition piece for Adepticon. I've got 4 down, 1 to go. So, and I'm going to do the War Queen actually as my fantasy competition piece because I love her and I think she's got the gas in the engine. Let me just say that. So,
really,
see, I think she is a quality model in every way that I need her to be quality. So there you go.
That's fair.
So that all aside, as usual, we hope that you're working on something while the show is going on. I hope that you're fighting the war against the gray. As always, tell us what you're working on. Want to know that we're helping people get things painted. But for right now, Tom, let's talk about some Legions, man. It's Valentine's Day. It's a day of love and celebration. So why not talk about the inevitable march of death across the mortal realms, right?
Sure.
Those two things go together. It just makes sense. So let's start out here. Your overall impressions of the book. Let's start at a very high level.
I felt like the book did a good job of offering new options, of unifying what we've traditionally considered like Grand Alliance death, largely. Obviously, it's functionally Grand Alliance death without Flesh Eater Courts or any of the ancillary stuff. And so in order to really be in any of the allegiances for the book, for like any of the Nagash stuff, Nagash or any of the Mortarch allegiances, you have to be, it has to be a unit from the book itself. And those books can ally Flesh Eater Courts, but that's it. And so there are some small like design issues. Like technically the Knight of Shrouds can't show up in any of the Nagash Legion armies. Because it's not keyword based. It's those allegiances, if you read it, are based on what's actually in that physical book.
Right. It's a very interesting limitation because it's like any of the units in this book.
In this book, right. And so like Knight of Shrouds can't be in a Nagash Allegiance army, which is nonsensical to me, but it is what it is. Like he can't be allied in even, because you got to remember allies are only Flesh Eater Courts for all of the allegiances. So he's a Night Haunt. Like, so even though the rest of Night Haunt's included, he's not. just because the rest of the Morgul is included. None, like they can't even be allied in. And that seems like that's a problem. But it is. What else? I felt like the balance was good. I didn't think that I didn't see anything that I was like, wow, that's broken. Nagash is going to be worth his 800 points. I found it really hard to get some balanced, well-rounded, low drop lists. There are no mega battalions there. I thought that was interesting. There are a couple of battalions normal battalions that could serve as 1-drops, but the challenge with those is that inevitably is that you're going to miss like strategic parts of your army by running those. Like the first cohort or whatever, the Nagash's battalion. Like if you 1-drop him, which you could easily do just points wise, you're not going to have any other heroes, and some stuff like that that are inevitably going to be problematic. So.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I thought the book was incredibly well put together. Like, so let me just start as usual with talking about like the quality of the delivery of the thing. They've been getting like this continues the Maggotkin of Nurgle level of quality, right? It just in the presentation of the book, its layout, the stories it tells, like the fluff section, I thought was fantastic. The way it breaks down kind of all the various elements of, Nagash's legions and their role within and how they serve the, Nagash. I mentioned earlier how Nagash sees everything as a tool to be used. And so like even the fluff itself kind of frames everything as the type of tool it is in Nagash's force, in his arsenal. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool because like there's just sort of a general alignment. It really is. It feels like his book.
Yeah.
The art is fantastic. This has a really, really great heavy metal painting section.
Okay.
That I thought this continues. Maggotkin, by the way, I said the same thing. This continues that on. Like they really get down and break a lot of the components down. One of my favorites is they show people how to do, I don't know, like a semi-complicated little design of freehand on a banner.
Yeah.
Right? And show you like, okay, you just start with like this simple little shape, and then you build it out here, and you build it like, and it's just little tiny steps, and like anybody can do it, right? That's what they show you. They kind of break down like how to do all the different types of flesh and the different dead flesh, the ghostly effects, all that kind of stuff. So like just as a general book for somebody who would be running death, if you're interested in the story of his legions, if you're interested in how to paint them better, all that kind of stuff, I think it's aces, right? Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. Relian has corrected me. Technically, at the end in the section on the Harbingers in Malign Portents, if you're using that rule set, it says they can always be included as allies to any army.
Oh, cool.
So
I couldn't correct you because, like I said,
paragraph. Yeah, like I remember reading it now. Like I do technically remember reading it now. Although like that raises questions of like whether match play tournaments are going to be utilizing Malign Portents in any formal way, and can those still be included? That'll be an interesting conundrum to see how events deal with that.
Neat. That's like the last page of the book. I just flipped through to see where it is. I haven't finished this book yet, so I didn't get to that part yet. I couldn't correct you because I haven't gotten through that second book yet.
It is the last page. I remember reading it. I just, yep.
Oh, well, there you go. I was reading in order. Sorry. Thank you, Relian. Good call out, man. All right. As to like the rules stuff, I mean, I think tonight we probably want to focus largely on things like the allegiance and battalions and stuff like that.
Because most of the units themselves are not new.
Yeah, exactly. The units are pretty much the units. Obviously, we talked a little about the mechanic, and we'll dig into sort of the new mechanic, the nature of summonable and stuff like that.
Which is also interesting, by the way. It's worth noting that all of the summons of undead have been removed. Talking again at a high level. All the summons of the undead have been removed. but the graveyards are included in the allegiances. Okay, like the graveyard mechanic, which is how you summon now, meaning that General Death can't summon because they don't get the graveyards.
Okay, I got to think about that. Okay. So you're saying because the generic Death Allegiance that's in here doesn't generate the graveyards, hence it can't do the graveyard summoning, and the summoning is no longer on there.
Let me double check that. That's a great question. Let me pull up my book, because it dawned on me that they did rewrite the generic Death Allegiance, so those may be included in there now. I may have gotten that back. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, yes, generic Allegiance Abilities Death has a thing in here.
It does.
No, it does not set up graveyards.
Yeah, you don't get graveyards with generic Allegiance Death. Okay, yeah, I was right there. Yeah, so the consequence is that if you have generic Death, you cannot summon anything, like anymore in Death, which is an interesting consequence. You'll still be able to restock your models, like regenning units, because many of the units will have the summonable keyword, but you won't actually be able to summon them using graveyards.
Yeah, they don't have like the other. So the big four allegiances, right? The blood, the sacrament, the grand host of Nagash, and the knight all have the unquiet dead or whatever, right? Which is the rule that allows you to set up the graveyards, and we'll dig into that a little bit. But yeah, Death didn't have it. That hadn't clicked in my mind. It's interesting because one thing that I've seen pop up over and over again is when you're talking about calling things out of graveyard, or the rules that let you replace whole units that sneak out of these grave sites, graveyards, grave places, Gravetown. People, there's a lot of like confusion over whether or not these take reinforcement points.
Yes,
which is very
they always take reinforcement points.
Right, like it's strange to me that that's the question. The answer is yes. If you're setting up a new unit, it takes reinforcement points. Getting rid of like summoning printed on the war scroll didn't get rid of the generic game rule that if you set up a new unit, it costs reinforcement points.
Right.
Right. Like that's still a thing. So it's just like, as a quick clarification right off the rip, I've seen that question come up like 18 times. And I don't understand where it's coming from. Like, yes, if you set up a new unit, whether from a grave site or from a triggering of a special rule or anything, it's reinforcement points. At least as of right now. Right now,
from a design,
some people have
design direction. I mean, it looks like they're moving towards a more restricted summoning, which might suggest that they're moving towards free summoning. Could
be. Yeah. Again, this is they've opened the door that world could be possible. If it happens, it would happen in like GHB 18 and probably in some weird controlled fashion.
Yep.
There could be other governor switches on it that we're not aware of, right?
Yep. Or even initial point raising. Like you could raise points on whatever and calculate that into the free mechanic.
Yep. But as of right now, if you're setting up a new unit, it's reinforcement points.
Yep.
That easy. Okay. So I thought we'd start by just kind of breaking down the four main allegiances, right? I wasn't too keen to talk about Soul Blight or Generic Death. They're pretty much what they were before.
Yes. They're similar, very similar.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, the interesting thing here is the four new ones, right? So the Grand Host, and then Sacrament, Blood, and Knight. Obviously, each spearheaded by Nagash and then the Mortarchs. And how they do that is in a very direct way. We've got a lot of new design space being explored here, right?
Yes.
So, like, on one hand, you already mentioned it, but, like, let's just take the Grand Host of Nagash, right?
Yep.
A Grand Host of Nagash army may include any of the units in this battle tome. So that's a new wall, right, that's been drawn around something that we haven't seen before.
Like,
previously,
it's not keyword based.
Right. It's not keyword based. It's not anything based other than like it's physically showing up in this book, right?
Yes. Which really limits, by the way, like, I mean, I guess there could be clauses to say that like this unit may be included in a Grand Host of Nagash in other rule sets, but it really restricts potential development of this army.
Well, I mean, I said it before, way back when this first got spoiled. This tells me for sure that we are going to see a new Death army, and it will not be subservient to Nagash.
Right.
And that's one of the, this to me is them just saying, yep.
That's the flag.
Yeah, 100%. And then if Nagash is included in the Grand Host of Nagash, he must be the army general.
Yep.
Right? So it's an interesting thing, because obviously you don't need to have him. Like, you could have,
no more is that White King commanding the Lord of Undead around.
Right. Sure. Yeah, it's an interesting, sort of hand forcing there, in that you don't have to have Nagash, but if you do, then he's the boss, right? He's Tony Danza in this situation. Or maybe he's not Tony Danza. I didn't really understand the point of who's the boss. But I get it in this case. If Nagash is there, he's got to be the general. So overall, I mean, I don't want to get I'm not going to read it line by line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is not a book review.
Right. But the Grand Host of Nagash, when you look at it, it plays like a grinding attrition force.
Yes.
Right. It's very much about restoring your units between what you're doing out of your grave sites, between what you're doing out of your leaders, and theoretically, potentially Nagash, who has an unbelievable amount of restorative power he can do. And then the Legion's innumerable rule, right? You have a lot of different ability to just simply heal units back up to full, that are almost destroyed, going back to just full.
A lot of people that I've talked to who have already, ran this and played it in the last week have said that they've watched units after a double turn go from 6 models back up to 30.
Sure.
That's happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and then obviously the command ability itself with the Endless Legions, which isn't unique, but it's just another ability to sort of you're getting a new command ability again, which is interesting.
There's
going
to be some real potential for alpha strikes too. And what I mean by that is it's not going to be hard if you go before your opponent to fly a hero forward. There's a lot of high mobility heroes. And then if assuming that you deployed a block of 40 skeletons and summons, or you deployed a unit of Graveguard and summons, you can just fly that thing, or fly your hero forward, pop them out of a graveyard that you've placed off of their line, and do a 9-inch charge. I mean, 9 inches, it's still a long charge. But let's say you do that at 3 points across the line. Statistically, one of those units is getting in.
Sure, there's also a pretty strong alpha blocking sort of potential here, right? To call people out of grave sites mid-board where they couldn't be zoned out easily, and then overtake mid-board objectives.
Duality of Death is going to be real painful against Death if Death goes first, because they'll push their heroes forward and then spring up blocks of 40 skeletons around them and just mire those objectives in bodies.
Yeah, and if you don't have a super hammer, you're never pulling them off there, right? If they're
you will
properly
never
backed
pull
up.
Right, because you have to kill out all those skeletons or graveyard to a man and still deal with the hero in the middle.
Right. Yep. And it's a very interesting sort of set of mechanics. And there's a lot of different armies we're going to talk about that I can see spilling out of this. This one to me is the one that has the most it suits well to having these big, massive tar pit units, right? Where you can have massive units of skeletons or Graveguard or something like that. Make it so they just basically you're regenning every one of them quite easily. And, and I think perhaps unsurprisingly, Nagash himself does seem like a pretty strong general of this force.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, man, there are few other generals that are going to grant to the entire table. Let's be very clear here. Sorry, take a drink. To the entire table, they are going to grant Battle Shock immunity, reroll ones to hit, reroll ones to save.
Yep.
Any one of those as a table-wide buff, people take generals for less than that.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. And there are sort of two interesting other abilities in the Grand Host of Nagash I wanted to sort of call out.
Sure.
The first is the magic,
Yep.
right? So just obviously your wizards know an additional spell from the Lures of the Dead, but Nagash gets 3 additional spells
Yeah.
from the Lure of the Dead, which I thought was funny, right? Because this has always been the classic sticking point of Nagash of like he knows so many more spells than he can ever actually cast. Or
Yeah.
sorry, flip that around. He can cast way more spells than he ever knew. Sorry,
Yeah.
strike that.
Yeah, so
reverse.
he had to
There we
like
go.
steal everybody else's spells, and they actually didn't get spells.
Right, exactly. Whereas now he can just like take a bunch of them and you don't really have to worry. He's going to have just tons of magical power and actually be able to utilize all his spells. And then the other ability I wanted to touch on is the Chosen Guardians things that he makes the Morghasts more deadly by adding 1 to their attacks, right?
Which, man, I love some I love a reason to put some Morghasts on the table. I'll say that.
Yeah, they're pretty strong in this force. That's for darn sure. I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I'm having trouble. Like, what's your thoughts on how you would use them in this list? Are they just like your little floating hammer around your bigger blocks? Like, do you have them as just an inclusion of 2Zs or 4Zs?
Yeah, like I think that's how, like, that's almost how you have to go. I think that in some other forces they could play some interesting roles. They are not summonable. So for those that for those that have thought that you could maybe do that, that's not going to happen. But I will say that 3d6 charge is really good.
Yeah, and as was pointed out just now in the comments, which is what I wanted to talk about, they now have both weapon kit outs, right? Like you can give the 3d6 chargers the halberds, right? And so that's pretty good. And then giving them an extra attack with those halberds, that's pretty good. I think it's funny too, because my tension and why I was kind of waffling around is exactly what Relian just put his finger on, which is like, they're so expensive, and I look and go, that could be so many more skeletons, right? Like that's just like I know it sounds stupid.
You are 60 points away from 38 more skeletons.
Yeah, like it's just I look at that and I'm like, God, you could be so many bodies.
Yeah.
Right now, realistically, I understand the difference of the power, and I think that I can't decide what I think is actually going to work out better.
No,
because
what I would say is this: I may run them now. I probably would not have ran them in a prior world. That's what I'll say. Like I could see myself building a list and playing with them and utilizing them. In a prior world, that wouldn't have happened.
Right. Yep. No, that's fair. That's a fair point. Were there any artifacts or anything or command traits that jumped out at you in the Grand Host of Nagash that you particularly liked?
Actually, like, it's kind of disappointing. Like, so when I actually looked at the Grand Host of Nagash, it was not, how do I want to say this? Like, there's nothing that I felt like I had to have. Does that make sense? Like,
sure.
Like when I like there's good stuff here. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like being able to subtract wound rolls from units, or being able to do a Terrorgeist scream, or like all that stuff is good. I love the one command trait that gives all 1 to attacks of all death rattle.
Yep, sure.
But here's the reality: if I'm running a Grand Host of Nagash, I'm running Nagash.
You're saying automatic. That's just how this goes.
If I run a Grand Host of Nagash, does that make sense? Like if I'm in this primary one, I'm gonna run Nagash. And so because I'm not gonna run I'm not gonna run a general that can run that Lord of Nagashazar. Does that make sense? Like that means I'm running a White King as my general in this army, and I just don't think that's gonna happen because I'm gonna want a battalion, and if I'm it's either going to be Death March or the First Host, and I'm going to want to run Nagash, so I'll probably end up in First Host if I go that route. So I just, Yeah, I don't know. Like, I started with Grand Host because that's where I felt like I was like, I'm going to do this. Nagash is going to be awesome. And I began running the numbers, and first hosts, like, it's so expensive to get everything in and to get the Bearmans and to get your 40 blocks. And then, like, and if you want to be low drop, you're going to be Nagash, and that's it for a hero.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say it, but against, like, a KO army, you are going to lose him at the top of one.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like, for me, obviously the Lord of Nagashazar or whatever, stood out because it is, like, it's pretty bonkers. Yep. I also, by the way, didn't hate Ancient Strategist, the reroll failed charge roll ones, because it's a 9-inch bubble, and it's not like they have to be wholly within. And we talked about the early game, like, sort of alpha forward setup and charge strategy, which actually I thought that was contributory toward. I do love the Terrorgeist Mantle artifact, only because like there's a bravery bomb list here. Yeah. I don't know if anybody's going to make it work, but like there's enough bravery cracking in this book to push people into negative bravery,
which is insane but fantastic. Yeah.
To where, like, if they lose one model and roll anything.
But in general, that's not in Nagash, though. Like, all the bravery stacking, though, isn't in the Grand Host of Nagash. That's in other allegiances.
It is. It is. You're not wrong. I mean, other than, like, a few components. I mean, yes and no. I mean, you can, like it said, anything could be included here.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's, even without true bravery bombing, where you're just, like, gilding the lily and stacking to get them to, like, bravery -1.
Yeah.
Which is possible, depending on their starting bravery. Like, you're still just almost incidentally knocking like 2 or 3 bravery off of everybody, right? Just for like playing the units in this army. It's just such a common thing that happens. And so, like, a lot of units in the game that aren't bravery 10, like, unless you're in the death on death mirror match,
right?
Which is that is a nightmare I cannot even imagine. You know what makes me not want to run this army?
Yeah.
Like
the mirror match.
Yeah, the mirror match. Because I just don't have it in me.
And I believe all graveyards units. By the way.
What's that?
All graveyards heal. Not just yours in the mirror match.
I would need to go look at that, but I don't know. That's funny. I hadn't thought about that. I had just thought about the fact of, like, 2 grindy attrition armies, like, plowing against each other. Not that every death army is a grindy attrition army. It's not. There are very many other armies you can do here. But, like,
because you pick a friendly summonable unit within 9 inches of a grave site.
Okay.
Surprise! Right. So, like, everybody re-heals, like, everything all the time.
Like, just, no, are you kidding me? Like,
Eternal War. It is Eternal War.
Oh my god, like, that's a nightmare. That's not my type of game.
What?
That is not my type of game. Right there. I gotta lay it out for you, man. Sorry. I can't do it. Like, there's a reason I have, like, Iron Jaws and crap, because I'm just like, yep, this is how I play. Wow! There's a different sort of strategy there. But anyway, yeah, I mean, the things like that, Terrorgeist Mantle, I really liked it because I said, like, if there's a lot of people in the world who are Bravery 6. Bravery 6 and 7 are very popular numbers across a lot of the armies that are around right now. When that suddenly becomes Bravery 4 and 5, and one guy, very easy way to, like, people start battle shocking pretty fast. It's pretty easy to roll more than 4 on 2 dice and, like, get a lot of mortal wounds out of whoever's wearing that thing in the shooting phase, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, again, are there going to be whiffs for it? Sure. Okay.
Yeah. It's not a terrible item.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else grabbed your attention or one you wanted to touch on?
No, I mean, in general, what I would say is I do think that the Grand Host potentially is a trap, unless you're running, as somebody said, like, you're maxing bodies. I think Relian said that, like, running like 120 skeletons and 60 Graveguard. You're just like, you're going just for max balls to the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And then in that world, suddenly it becomes functional.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Let's move on. Let's talk about the Legion of Sacrament, shall we?
Indeed. This is my favorite.
Yeah, I knew this one was your favorite. So obviously we've got all Archons Legion here. So same rules apply.
Yep.
Right.
If Archon's there, he has to be the general.
Yep. Any units in this book apart from Nagash.
Yep.
Right. If it includes any Mortarchs, then it must include Archon the Black, and he must be the army's general. Yep. Another interesting set of slight wording there. Yep. But not that it can't include others. You could have like more than one show up, but Archon's in charge when the sacrament rules are rolling. So I know you've got a lot of thought and you've put a lot of thought into this one. This is the one that grabbed you. You want to kind of run us through this one and what you think about it?
So this is your kind of quote, your magical battalion.
Right.
Or your magical allegiance. So all wizards out of the gate in Legions of Sacrament know an additional spell from one of the Lords of the Dead. Okay.
Yep.
Now it's interesting the way that this is worded. So normally, like Death Mages can grab Lord Death Mage, Vampire, Soulblight, vampires, or Soulblight can grab vampires. The way that this is worded, you may be able to pull a spell from the magic. Like I wouldn't be willing to go to the mat on this necessarily, but you may be able to pull a spell out of a lore that you don't normally have access to because of how this is worded. It just says you gain a bonus spell from one of the lores. Which is how it's worded with Nagash. So when I read this would say that you gain a Death Mage. The Death Mages gain a Death Mage spell, and then also they get one additional that can be Death Mage or Soulblight.
I don't know. I mean, all four of them say that, but okay.
Well, right. But what I'm saying is that like, yeah. Anyways, but like, yes, Nagash. Otherwise, like, he would only be able to. Oh, actually, he could choose from either because of he's a. Anyways, but okay. So the magic. So you need to say out of the gate, you're gaining 2 spells on every wizard base instead of 1. Okay. The Unquiet Dead, so they have the summonable graveyard stuff, which is fantastic. Deathless minions, you roll dice anytime you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a friendly death unit within 6 inches. Same Deathless minion stuff.
We didn't mention it before, but it is standard across all of these have that, including even the generic Death Allegiance. Yeah.
Master's Teaching is an interesting one. Whenever you destroy an enemy unit before removing the last model, you can pick one of your grave sites within 6 inches of that model. Roll a dice and then remove the model. On a 4+, you pick a friendly summonable unit that has been destroyed and set it up again wholly within 9 inches of the gravesite and more than 9 inches from the enemy model. So it gives you a chance of restoring one of your units if you have the reinforcement points. Restoring one of the units that have been of yours that have been destroyed that are summonable. And with the way I want to play this force, that's not outside the realm of possibility potentially of having kind of extra points floating around. To bring like low model count units back on the table as objective captors. And then obviously, in addition to that, everybody in the wizards within this battalion add +1 to casting. So they're another +1 to cast, which is awesome when you begin to add everything else up. And anybody that is within this legion gains an additional command ability, which lets them obviously like summon a summonable unit, yada yada.
Yeah, it's the Endless Legions one, same as everything else. Again, there's a lot of shared traits across all 4 of these, and this is another one of those, right? Yeah.
Yep. And so this is what lets people, but this lets you reset a destroyed unit back up. Mm-hmm. So there's more of that. So the other thing about this that jumped out to me is that I just can't get enough of the artifacts from the our artifacts of sacrament. Like there's just so many things that just jump off the table here.
Okay. Which doesn't surprise me because this one's full of like defensive-y crap.
It is.
Exactly your bag of that defensive-y crap. So there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, the key is that heroes are often assassinated.
Sure.
I want to keep my heroes alive, which means I need defensive-y crap in my artifacts because artifacts are how you do that.
Sure.
So wristbands of black gold, they are your anti-KO artifact. in the shooting phase, whoever you give this to gets a 4+ save against all damage in the shooting phase.
Yep.
So that's really good. And then the Shot of Darkness, also another favorite of mine. So against folks in the shooting phase, -1 to hit from hit rolls that target the bearer if the unit is within 8 inches. If it's farther than 8 inches, it's -2 to hit in the shooting phase. Again, another anti-KO tool that's out there. Or like deep striking Auric Rune Smiters, or all of those. All of those things that would pop up and take off a piece. But then there's also stuff like the like black gem insta kill thing.
Yeah, I love the black gem. I'm glad you mentioned it because I truly love the black gem. You want to talk about how this thing works?
Yeah, pick a point. Once per game in the hero phase, pick a point within 8 inches of the bearer. And then basically roll dice for every unit within 3 inches of that point. And like, there's not a few times that I've seen like clusters of heroes in the backfield.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
And you pick every unit within 3 inches, you roll dice. On a 6+, one model from that unit is slain.
Right. So, and the obvious implication here being if there is only one model in that unit.
Yes, it
like
dies.
A character or a monster.
So I think about like Fire Slayer packs.
I love that thing. A little.
Like Fire Slayers like to have like their general and the battlesmith and that often nearby, and you just pick a point right next to them and just kill. Like have a shot of just one-shotting all of those heroes.
Yeah, I mean Stormcast heroes often clump in the same way, right? Yep. Like there's often you'll see like the Castellant and the Celestant and maybe like Mr. Toots. Or a Relictor, all kind of floating around in their little hero pack, buffing everybody, hiding in the Staunch Defender or whatever, right?
Yep. Not the Staunch Defender, like the reroll missile attacks aura from the Lantern, and like all of that needs proximity. And so this is like, hey, I got something for you.
Yeah, I do love the black gem.
Yes,
yeah, that's pretty great.
And in the list that I was looking at running, like it lets me run all of those items, which,
sure. I mean, that's like one quick note on the battalion thing. Like, I do generally agree with you that there's not a huge amount of like obvious one drop lists,
right?
Although I don't think there's zero, by them by.
Sure.
But I think there's actually like some of these we should mention. Like, we haven't gotten to battalions. We'll touch on it when we get there. But some of these are pretty efficiently costed, given the world of battalions we live in.
Yep.
Right? And it does make me think we're going to see battalions get point adjusted again, in the new world of GHB 2019 or 2018, whatever freaking year it is. I think we will see battalions not like they almost uniformly jumped way up. And as we've said, I don't think they're going to uniformly jump way down. I think they're going to come
strategically jump down. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, perfect. And I think this is sort of signaling that, right? So like there are a lot of armies right now in the GHB 2017 pricing that like if you're going to run 2 battalions, you've got to dedicate 300 to 400 points to just battalions.
Most armies are like that. If you're running multiple battalions, you're dedicating 300 to 400 points.
Right. That's not weird. Whereas in this, you don't have to go that far in. There's, like it's not like you're getting them for like 20 points a piece or something. It's not that.
No, but like there's like, for example, one of them that's going to be popular in my mind is the Lords of Sacrament, which is the Castery Archon battalion.
Yep.
And it's like 70 points.
Right, exactly.
Like that's pretty good.
Yep. So you can have multiple battalions in here. So the idea of getting sort of, easy access to multiple magic items and being able to soup up multiple heroes is not beyond the pale at all.
Yep.
Here in these armies. So it's sort of a very interesting advantage that I haven't really heard a lot of people talking much about. I'm not saying people haven't been. I'm saying I haven't seen it. And I think it is interesting how much more aggressive some of these battalions are. So,
yeah.
Cool. Was there any command traits you wanted to call out in here?
No, because if I'm running this, I'm running Arkan as my general. Because the problem is I'm gonna run. If I run this, I'm running Lords of Sacrament. If I'm running Lords of Sacrament, Arkan's in my force. If Arkan's in the force, he has to be the general. So like suddenly it just rules out any alternate builds. But I mean, let's be honest. Like what it's doing is you have. Got myself.
I know. I caught it.
What it's doing is you get Arkan, who knows all like spells with, like he's a mini Nagash.
Sure.
Who has like a base +3 cast. Who's at +4 because he's in the Legion of Sacrament, and at +5 because he has the Mortis engine nearby.
Sure.
So he's at +5 on all of his spells. And he knows two bonus spells. And his 2 necromancers know 2 bonus spells. And they're basically immune to shooting. Because they have the super souped up defensive artifacts. Or one of them is that, and then you'll make the White King from your Death March battalion immune to shooting. Probably that. So one of the necromancers. But anyways, so you'll have a nice selection of all of the death spells. You'll have great range because you can trigger it and add 6 inches to all their range. That battalion creates a bunker, and then you get all your bodies from Death March. You get a very, very well costed 2-drop army.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was gonna say. Like, I think there are a fair number of like 2, 3, 4 drop armies, less ones, but probably more in the like 2 to 5 range. It really depends on like the weird other heroes or kind of other little pieces you bring in, right? I think of whether you stay at 2 or drift up toward 5. I did want to call out the Bound to the Master, which I thought was interesting. Bound to the Master is a command trait out of here that this general may use Archon the Black's First of the Mortarchs command ability, which I thought was, kind of an interesting thing that you can actually like make if Archon is mini Nagash, you can make your generic dude into a mini Archon. I just thought it was funny that they're playing like with giving a normal character a special character's ability. Thought that was interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
I didn't have any.
That too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like maybe I don't know. Like I don't know what hero. Like what I would want to do is maybe choose somebody that's more survivable. But I don't know who that would be, because if I take like a vampire on zombie dragon, like I'm probably going to use his command trait. Like I'm not using the extra 6 inches to cast.
Sure.
So
I don't know. But here we are.
Indeed.
Let's talk about the Legion of Blood, man. Let's talk about blood. Blood. Okay. I think this one will be a popular one. Let me just say that.
Okay.
So this is Nephis, right?
Yep.
Same rules apply, blah, blah, blah. Anything in this book. If there's any Mortarchs, you got to include Nephi, and she's got to be the general, and so on and so forth. Okay.
Yep.
So we got all that. Standard crap of magic items and all that stuff. Standard Unquiet Dead gravesite stuff, and they do all the normal crap. Your special things about this are Immortal Majesty. So, like, here's your extra bravery bombing, right?
Yep.
Because this is the subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic of enemy units within 6 inches. Let me just say that one of the things I love about most of these bravery effects is they're not
restricted
during exactly, yeah, they're not restricted to the battle shock phase. They're just like, yep, it's neg1 bravery. So, and like obviously there's all sorts of ways to capitalize on this with the existing things you have in the army that deal with attacking bravery and stuff like that, terror geists and whatnot. And then you also have favored retainers, which I think is going to be a popular because it's add 1 to the attacks characteristic of all melee weapons used by friendly Legion of Blood Vampire Lords and Legion of Blood Blood Knights.
Yeah.
That's a lot of attacks. And as near as I can tell, that does work on the Vampire Lord's mount as well, on his zombie dragon, because it's not a
character trait and it's not an item.
Correct.
Or it's not a command trait and not an item, which is where the clauses for not affecting mounts are.
Right. So that's pretty scary. That dude is a house in this army. Blood Knights lost, like, this is where we should talk about Blood Knights. We mentioned this tangentially before. They lost their summonable. Yep. So they have like little minor itty bitty baby healing of like restoring a wound still or whatever if they hurt people, like all standard kind of vampire blood drinking crap.
Yep.
But for the most part, they ain't coming back, right? Like if they're dead, they dead.
Yeah. So they are a more fragile glass, like they're a hammer now. Like they've always been a hammer, but they're not gonna be tanky. Like they're not an amble at this point.
Yeah. And so like leaning into the extra attack, I think makes them interesting. I'll be completely honest, I'm really on the fence on these guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you're saying for Blood Knights?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is the Legion I was going to do, by the way, going into this. Like, just artistically, like, I want to do new Lamnia and all that. Nope. Not going to do it. I had a bunch of Blood Knight conversions, and I'm like, no, I don't think this is the direction I want to go.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's good stuff here. I think that if you were going to do some hardcore bravery bombing, this is, one of the places you could really do it, right? Their artifacts aren't terrible. Like specifically the Oubliette Arcana is a really interesting item. So did you remember this one off the top of your head?
No, I don't.
Okay, so this one's a really interesting artifact, just design-wise, which is, in case you haven't noticed, what catches my eye on first read, right? Yep. Okay, so here's the Oubliette Arcana. When an enemy wizard, keyworded, successfully casts a spell within 30 inches of the bearer, that's a much bigger range than your normal dispel thing, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of attempting to unbind it, you can declare that the Oubliette Arcana will attempt to capture the magical energies.
Yep.
Roll a dice. On a 6+, the spell is negated and has no effect. In addition, that spell may not be cast again by that wizard for the rest of the battle.
Yeah.
So the question that got asked, and I don't know that I have a good answer. Okay.
Yep.
I think I know how I read it, but this happens on every spell cast within 30 inches.
Correct.
And isn't limited to, like, normally you'd only have like one unbind check or something, but it's not referencing that. It's just saying if you do it, you don't get a shot at unbinding it.
Correct.
The fact that you're getting to roll on every freaking spell means that, like, over a couple rounds, you're going to start draining away magic pretty fast.
Yep.
Right?
Because it's not going to be happy if you roll up to the table with this.
Yeah, like the fact that it shuts off that spell for the whole game.
From that caster, to be very clear. So Tzeentch can still get around this because they do some spell sharing. Sure. With Scribes, they do some spell sharing with Changeling. They do some spell sharing with Kairos. So
to me, this is more interesting for people who don't like who don't have Tzeentch's like little let's all hump our spells onto each other abilities, right?
Right.
Where people are using very specific casters to do very specific things.
Hand of Glory from the Lore Master.
Yeah, absolutely. Or, incidentally stealing Mystic Shield from a random caster.
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
Now, look, you might say, well, they had 3 casters or something, and you stole Mystic Shield from one of them. Okay, the other 2 guys can steal Mystic Shield.
But tactically, they may not be the right characters to cast Mystic Shield.
Right. They might not be in the right position. They might not be, like, they might have a spell that they really needed to be, because it might be the Lore Master really needed to use that Hand of Glory, and now he's sitting there Mystic Shielding instead, right? Or whatever.
Yep.
So it's a really interesting artifact as to what it, after what it can cause to happen to your opponent.
Agreed.
It doesn't stop them from knowing the spell, interestingly. It just says they cannot cast it again for the rest of the battle, right? So, which I think is nice, because then there's not questions in the Tzeentch thing of, like, people still know the crap, but whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I thought that one was cool. There was what else? the like aura of Dark
Mhm.
Majesty is a
Yep.
traditional sort of item I really like, especially for your sort of vampire lords who are going to be very in melee and very buffed up, right? So getting neg one against them neg one to hit them in the combat phase is really good. You know, neg one to hit the guy who's going to be in melee and is one of your most important pieces. Pretty good. It's
Yeah.
pretty good.
I
I'm
thought
not sure about this. Oh, go ahead.
I thought the design space on the Ring of Dominion was interesting.
Yeah, you want to talk about that one?
Yeah.
It is interesting.
So what it does is it like you pick an enemy, and we've had something similar to this before, but you pick an enemy within 3 inches. On a 5+, you pick one of their melee weapons, and by the way, this is like every combat phase. On a 5+, an enemy within 3 inches. On a 5+, you pick one of their weapons. But it says, though not one that has a value for one or more characteristics that is given with it, like the little star. Which what that means, by the way, is you don't get, like monsters, you don't get any of their special attacks that are tied to their profiles, which I thought was interesting.
Well,
and then through this
yeah,
combat
not necessarily.
phase, the bearer of the ring may attack with that weapon in addition to their own.
Yeah, like that's a really situationally interesting item. I agree.
Yeah.
Because like there's some monsters that have like that have really cheater lines, right? Like they have a really powerful attack that for some reason, because like their move and some magical or ranged ability is tied to it, and they couldn't put all their melee attacks on the table. You know, it's kind of limited to 3 basically. That melee attack just never gets weaker, and so it's quite static. That makes you like stealing that becomes super duper powerful, right? When you can take that like neg 2 rend d6 damage attack that hits on 3s and 3s or whatever, and just like add that in, toss that on the pile.
Sure.
That's pretty good. Because again, theoretically, what you're attacking with is already pretty potent.
Yes.
Right. Like in this army, you're not rocking up with weak crap already, right? Like this is the vampire one.
Yeah. This is your vampire lord probably on zombie dragon.
Right. Yep.
That's rolling
in. The other one that I thought was interesting was the sanguine blur, where you can add 2 inch to the general's move and reroll failed charge rolls for him. Again, it depends like how melee kitted and insane you want the guy to be. It's a little bit of gilding the lily because the vampire lord on zombie dragon is already like super duper fast. Like he's certainly fast enough for what he needs to be, but being faster is always good. Like moving real far in this game isn't a bad thing. So it was interesting.
Hashtag movement meta.
Yeah, it's true, man. It's true. So, you know, I liked this one. This was the one that sort of my problem with it is I couldn't and still can't decide on Blood Knights. Because I think that ultimately I like them, but I think they are probably overcosted for what they're capable of now, even with the bonus attack. I think if they were like 20 to 40 points cheaper, I'd probably be in. But they're not.
They are definitely not.
Yeah. So like they're just such a big chunk of your army, right?
Yep. They are battle line.
Yeah, sure. I mean, okay. For what? I thought that was only for Soul Blight though, right?
Oh, sorry. For some reason I thought that that they became conditional battle line for blood, but you're right. They don't. Nope. It is Soul Blight.
Yeah, so I mean, like,
so they're still worthless. Yeah.
Yeah. And then last up, we have the Legion of the Garbage People, the terrible Legion, the Legion of Awfulness, led by the worst person and worst being in the mortal realms.
I didn't see this allegiance in my book.
Oh, it's in there.
Are you sure?
The Legion of Garbage. That's what it says. Yeah, that's what it says in my book. I maybe because I took like a Sharpie to it and crossed it out.
No, it's not in mine. It's gone. I don't know what this allegiance is.
Yes, we should talk about the Legion of Night because it actually is interesting and does have some fun stuff. But yes, this is obviously joking aside. This is Manfred's Legion, right?
And clearly, we have no high opinion of Manfred.
In case that's not obvious.
Go ahead and talk about it.
Sure, I'll talk about it because it does like the two sort of unique abilities on this one are actually really interesting. And the two abilities are the bait, which is add 1 to save rolls for friendly Legion of the Night Death Rattle units wholly within your territory. So like that's cool for games that have an objective in your territory. You can make your very hard to kill and very easy to restore units even harder to kill. That's not a bad thing in my estimation. You know, all of your skeletons getting +1 to save is pretty good. +1 to save is never bad, I think. But then the real ability for this one is the Ageless Cunning, where instead of setting up a Legion of the Night unit on the battlefield, you can place it to one side and say that it's set up an ambush. You can do this with up to 3 units. And at the end, interesting wording there, at the end of any of your movement phases, you can set up any of the units in ambush wholly within 6 inches of any battlefield edge and 9 inches away from the enemy. So they march on.
Yeah, which is, by the way, the same point in the turn that your summonable units are coming on.
Right. We didn't make a mention of that before, but it is relevant. It seems like such a small point, but there are some interesting things that will trigger, because they're being very much more precise in their language now about this, where certain things are happening at the start of your movement phase and certain things are happening at the end of your movement phase. And so, like, you know that they can't overlap, right?
Well,
like,
right. And what I would say also is that it removes all of those normal hero phase synergies that you'd expect from command abilities, hero phase synergies from spells, like those buffing spells, like the double pile-in, necromancer spell, stuff like that. And the turn those units come in, you will not get that buff.
Right. So, you know, that's a really interesting ability between the ambush and your normal Unquiet Dead, you know, gravesite ability. You do have a lot of different abilities. Like, this army can ultimately just kind of come from everywhere, which is interesting.
And so I had mentioned the Morghast, the 3d6 charge that I was interested in. This is what I had in mind. Was actually the Legion of Night, because you're setting up Morghasts 9 inches out with a 3d6 charge. Statistically, they're making that charge every time.
Well, I wouldn't say every time, but yes, on average, I
the
think
number, the numbers are in your favor on that charge. Let me say it that way.
There you go. There you go.
Let me
and then
obviously,
sure. Obviously, interestingly, there is a command trait that lets the general join the 3 units when you use that ambush thing. So the general himself, or herself, I suppose, depending on what your general happens to be, can also join those other 3 units and then sweep in, you know, from like a battle edge. So kind of cool there. Did any of the items in this one grab you? Any of the ones that stood out?
I mean, there's some good stuff there. I mean, I haven't dug. I will be honest. I haven't dug too much into the Legion of Night, just simply because it's not something that interests me to paint up an army, aligned with stupid face.
Sure. No, I get that. Also, hashtag stupid face. I do have an item that I want to point out, because there is one in here that I actually think is pretty freaking sweet. And that's Morbeg's Claw, or however you say it. So basically, in your hero phase, you can declare that the bearer will carve sigils in the ground with his claw. If you do so, they can't move, charge, or attack.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you can add 2 to casting rolls made for friendly Legion of the Night wizards within 12 inches of the bearer. Whoa! Like, it's pretty easy to have some random hero who wasn't gonna move, charge, or attack. You know, like any random spellcasting dip crap, like some necromancer or something who's just hiding around somewhere.
Yep.
And, you know, being able to broadcast a +2 to cast bubble out to 12 inches, it's pretty good. Like, that's a big bubble of a big bonus cast.
It is. So this inevitably to me begs the question of, can the Legion battalions the other Legion battalions go in, like let me say it this way: the battalions that have allegiance to one of these legions, can they go in other legions?
We've said the word legion way too many times, or some variants of it in the past 8 seconds.
Yes. So the example of this being, for example, the Lords of Sacrament, which is the Lords of Sacrament is a Legion of Sacrament battalion.
Mm-hmm.
Can you field that in a Legion of Night army? Like, what's his face would have to be in there.
Right. Manfred has to be in there.
Manfred has to be in there because Arkin's in there, and if any Mortarks are in there, blah, blah, blah. So yes, but the question is can that Legion come in, or can that battalion come in because of how those allegiances work? Because they have removed the line that says that, like, and that's the problem, is that, like, all of like, it's not based on, these battalions or these legions aren't based on keywords anymore.
Right.
And it's the units that can be included, not necessarily the battalions that can be included.
Right.
And so I'm not sure that you can have a Legion of Sacrament battalion in a Legion of Night. Like, I would say this, it's not clear in the rules, the way that the rules have been written up.
I guess my question would be, why not? Because the method of how you declare allegiance is more or less keyword based to everything that's in your army and in reinforcement, right?
Yes.
And so if you have fulfilled all of the requirements,
your battalion does not have the right keywords. Is they have said that the title above the name, or the allegiance above the name of a battalion is its keyword. They have stated that. And you're saying that, hold on, but there's nothing there. Okay, so hold on. All right. Yep. Okay, so let's assume that's the case. Yep.
All right, that's how that works.
Yep.
There's no prohibition against including, like, what makes you a Legion of Night isn't keyword based. It's any of the units in this battle tome. So arguably, it's just simply silent on the nature of battalions, is my point, right? Because it doesn't say, by the way, the Legion of Night battalion. Here's my issue. Under your logic, the Legion of Night battalion would no more qualify or whatever than anything else. Like, yeah, sure, it consists of units that fit in there easy enough, like Manfred. But there's nothing about the Legion of Night keyword. Assume that's the keyword. Yeah. There's nothing about that makes it part of that, right? Because it's silent on battalions, period. So, like, if you read with the hard reading you're implying, you can't take battalions, period, because it doesn't allow battalions. It only allows units in this book, and that's clearly not
that's not intended. So but it would be worth some clarification, because I could see some people at a tournament being non-sportsmen trying to call stuff like this, which is ridiculous. But inevitably, there are people like that. And if they convince a TO, then it can create bad experiences. Yeah,
like, again, I don't see what, like, the Lords of Sacrament battalion says Lords of Sacrament above it. Who cares? Nothing about that says I can't use it in a Lords of Night allegiance. I've satisfied the allegiance rules. All my units have keywords or whatever as per that.
Well, those keywords don't, like, so my pushback would be this. Like, to either even further move on your argument, there is no such thing as a Legion of Sacrament keyword. That does not exist.
Right. Exactly. So, like, I wouldn't mind an FAQ. I'm not against it. Don't get me wrong. Like,
well, and the other wrench in this whole situation is that there used to be a line that all of us would cite. You know, like, we went hunting for this line in the rules, like me and Nico did, when when the whole ally system came up, and where does, like, Plague Touch fit in? Because it's an Everchosen battalion. Is it Nurgle? Yada yada. The same thing with Tzeentch and Fatesworn and Everchosen battalion and blah blah blah.
Yeah, right.
And, like, do we need allies points, or can we pay for them? And previously, up until this set of handbooks, there was a line in the introductory page to the battalions in bullet point number 4. There's a sentence that used to say, like after it says all the generic normal Legion stuff, it says a battalion can have an allegiance can have any allegiance that every unit in the battalion also has. So previously, like if you had like in the Plague Touched instance, you had an ever-chosen battalion, but everything in there also had the Nurgle keyword, thus it could be included in a Nurgle Allegiance army. Okay? Mm-hmm. So that was very clearly laid out in the prior set of rules. That sentence has been removed from these most recent books.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just doesn't hold water. To me, yes, you can absolutely include the Lords of Sacrament in a Legion of Night aligned army, assuming you've satisfied everything else.
Right.
Because if you go to like the Death March, which is clearly meant to be not its own thing, right? Yep. It's meant to be something that's the generic, but it just says death, right?
So like, again, Death Allegiance Battalion, yes.
Yeah, if you were to take this logic to its end conclusion, then I couldn't include Death March in any of the things where it's absolutely appropriate, like in a Grand Host of Nagash or something. So no, I mean, I'm never against FAQs, but to me, this one's pretty clear. Like, as long as you satisfy the rules of the battalion, and as you said, you'd have to include then Manfred over the top, right? So you do have to have the 2 Mortarchs there.
Yep.
As long as you meet those other rules. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. Like, if I miss something, audience, throw it in the comments. But as near as I can tell, there is no reason why you couldn't do that. Because otherwise, we're going to get into absurdity real fast, right?
No, and I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying I would like it to be. It would be nice if it was clearer, where there was no question about it.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm like I said, never against clarifications. So since we already started talking about this. Yep. And obviously, so there's not a huge number of battalions in here. All right, there's what, 7? Am I right? Is that right?
Yeah, no, it's fairly tight. Yeah.
6. Sorry, 6. But nonetheless, obviously you have one dedicated to all the things, as we just mentioned, right? So the sort of 2 of those, and then you've got 2 death battalions, one of which features Prince of Ordrai, the new Mr. New Guy. By the
way, it was pointed out to me that when you choose your Legion, all of those units gain that keyword. So that is technically a keyword.
Okay.
For whatever that's worth. So
sure, I mean.
So they do gain like a Legion of Sacrament keyword, all units in a Legion of Sacrament army.
Okay.
So that may again further complicate this situation.
I don't know, man. I again, then even if so, then I couldn't take. I will point back to, if you go with that interpretation, then I cannot take like the Death March battalion, because all that's rocking is the death keyword.
No, you could, because when in that prior world where that sentence was still in there, everything in your battalion would have the Legion of Sacrament keyword, so the battalion would gain the Legion of Sacrament keyword.
I understand that, but we just said that sentence isn't there.
Right. So that's what I don't understand why it was even removed, because that's what provided the warrant, that's what provided the umbrella under which all the battalion stuff functioned, and now it's just unclear how battalions function with allegiances.
Yeah. Okay. My answer is yes, it works. You can mix and match as long as they fit. So there you go. I cannot picture another way this works.
Sure.
Anywho, if I'm wrong and somebody's got a coherent argument, I'm all for it. But sure. If your argument is it says a different thing at the top, that's not a good enough argument, because again, then you're going to block out the generic death ones too, and that is seemingly crazy. As well as any other random battalion that might fit, where you would otherwise qualify. Yeah, okay. So anyway, let's get back to this. What's your, rather than break down all 6, you have one you really like, 1 or 2 you really like?
Yeah.
What are your battalion picks?
I'm going to go back to the Legion of Sacrament. My 2, I'll just do 2. Sure. Legion of Sacrament is my, I love what you're getting, because it's your entire contingent of heroes.
Sure, it's Archon, 2 Necromancers, and a Mortis Engine.
Yep, right. Archon, 2 Necromancers.
2 or more.
2 or more. So you could do like a full contingent of necromancers if you really wanted to.
Yep.
And it's going to get you. So in a Legion of Sacrament, again, all these are getting a bonus spell. So you're going to get like 6 bonus spells known. Arcan's going to get all of those. Because of the Mortis engine, everybody here is going to be +2 to, because you're going to keep. So the base rules of it is this battalion hinges on having your Mortis engine nearby.
Yep. Everybody wants to hump the Mortis engine.
Everybody wants to hump the Mortis engine because each wizard within 6 inches of the Mortis engine are casting an extra spell. So Arcan's going to 3 spells, right? Because he's normally 2. Is that right? I think so.
I don't remember. I do not remember off the top of my head. I apologize. I don't have his war scroll in front of me.
No worries. He is indeed 2 spells. So he goes to 3 next to the Mortis engine. He goes to 3 next to the Mortis engine. Everybody, all the base necromancers go to 2 spells. So you're sitting at 7 castable spells. Arcan is at a whopping like +5 to cast. Is that right? Because he's a base 3 from his items, and then no, he's a base 2. So he goes to a base +4 to cast. And then everybody else is at a base +2 to cast, which is strong.
Strong.
And then with all 7 of their spells, and then while they're near that Mortis engine, everybody gets +1 to save, which that's kind of a big deal for Arcan, who doesn't really have any other defenses, because he sits at a base 3 up then with this, and then he goes to a 2 up with a Mystic Shield.
Yeah, and he's kind of made of paper. Like, to be fair, that dude dies somewhat easy. Now, I will say, if you don't kill him, he can bring himself back up. He can stitch himself back together quick enough.
Right, and so for me, this is an interesting alternative to running Nagash. This gets you 7 spells, 3 of the 7 spells per round, 3 of them at +4, and then 4 of them at +2. They're at +6 inch to cast range, so they're all at longer range, so they can be farther out of the mix. You're gaining more items because of the battalion layout, better items. You have mobility, so you can spread these heroes out if you need them. You have multiple sources of the double pile-in buff, the Dance Macabre, or the Van Hel's dance. You have and then it's also providing defenses. Necromancers you can hide. You can't really hide in Nagash if you wanted to. Like, it's just all of the different things. And it's only 70 points. And so you'll be able to get multiple heroes out of the deal. You're able to get a mobile kind of unit. And then it dovetails really well with the first... I'm sorry, not the first. The Death March. Death March is the old, like, the old Legion of Bone, or the Legion of... the old skeleton, the old Death Rattle battalion, which is like a White King, a Black Knight unit, a Graveyard unit, and 3 skeleton units. And it, like, in this battalion, like, or this setup lets you max out like 2 of the big skeleton blocks, and then have everything else that you could deploy in summonable, so you could have objective holding summonable things. And you have enough heroes to kind of spread things around. Yeah.
Well, and I love Death March's ability. Like, just to talk about Death March real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I really do love it. Like, the whole unbreaking ranks thing, basically, in your hero page, you get to return 1 slain model to each Death March unit within 9 inches of the battalion's White King. And then in addition, in your hero phase, the White King and all units from his Death March unit that are within 9 inches of him can move 4 inches as if it were your movement phase. They can't run. So, like, you get extra free move in your hero phase. And you get to just straight restore another model, right? Yep. And what's key about that whole, like, 1 model back thing is with the Black Knights being multi-wound models. Because we didn't talk about, like, the Deathly Invocation ability or whatever yet. But this is a good chance to dovetail to mention that. So, like, the standard, that's what it's called, right? Deathly Invocation, I think that's the name of the thing. Deathly Invocation, the thing that returns people. Yes, I wanted to make sure I had the proper name of it. So everybody, like from White Kings to the special characters up to Nagash, basically you're picking between 2 to 5 different units.
And every hero gets this buff.
Every hero gets this buff, yes. Well, that's not true. Not every hero. Most heroes. There are some that don't. Like the Coven Throne gets it, which is cool. So ideally, you're picking, they have to be different units. You can't just pile on. But you pick 2 to 5 units, depending, again, on the individual hero. Nagash is the only one who has 5.
Yep.
And you roll a d3, and you either restore that many wounds to wounded models, or if there are no wounded models, you can return that many models as long as you can return a whole model within the wound number you rolled.
Yep.
The key there being for multi-wound things, first of all, this has to be summonable stuff, by the way, you're choosing. I don't think I mentioned that, but yes, you're picking summonable units. So you can't just do this to any old random thing.
Which everything in Death March is summonable.
Yes. Black Knights are obviously summonable. And the key being is that if you roll a 1 or a 2 on your D3, right? So you're rolling a D6, you get a 1 or a 2, hence 1. You just get nothing. No Black Knight stands back up. You don't get a 1 wound Black Knight, right? So actually getting back an extra one, I think, is cool. I love it just because this is like the battalion for a lot of your meat. Yes. And it gives it free extra move.
Yep.
It's good. And also, by the way, I like the White King now quite a bit. So there you go.
Yeah, no, agreed. And what I love about this is that with the Legion of Sacrament, you have those 2 hyper defensive items. One is the 4+ ward save. The other is the neg 1 or neg 2 to hit in the shooting phase. The 4+ ward in the shooting phase, or neg 2 to hit in the shooting phase. And the White King ends up being a good recipient of that 4+. Because he's going to be up kind of in the mix, and this is going to keep him alive a little bit longer, from all that shooting sniping that's going to be going. Where you don't get those hyper defensive items in the other legions. The other advantage, by the way, over running a solo Nagash, Nagash would pick 5 units and then auto restore 3 wounds to each in his mega battalion.
Yep.
But here you actually end up with 4 heroes in this dual 2-drop dual battalion list. You have 4 heroes that can spread out their restorative stuff, so you can stack 4 healing buffs from all 4 of them onto 1 unit if you're within range.
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned the assassination of Nagash by the Caradron overlords.
Yep.
Earlier on. Let me just say that the sort of first cohort of Nagash,
yes,
does realistically have a pretty strong prevention against that alpha strike against Nagash, right? Because when you set him up, you put a unit of Morghasts next to him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a 3, each time he suffers a wound or mortal wound, you roll a die, and on a 3 up, it goes to the Morghast unit instead. They've got a pretty big pile of wounds. Even if it's just a 2-pack of Morghasts.
A 2-pack will have 12 wounds. That said, you can dump all your junk shooting into them and pull them off the table.
Maybe not. I mean, again, depending on bubble wrap and how close you can get, how much you might be quite limited on how much junk shooting you can get into them, especially if they're just standing behind him.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Nagash is already pretty tough.
Yeah.
Adding 12. Well, effectively, mathematically it adds 9 wounds to 8 wounds to him.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. Something like that. 8 or 9 wounds. I mean, with that unit around in that cohort, I don't doubt that KO can put out enough firepower to assassinate him normally. Assassinating him plus 8 or 9 wounds, that is stretching the amount of firepower that they can put into one dude. It really is. Let me say this. If it's still going to happen, it ain't going to happen every time. I'll tell you that much for darn sure.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
So that's actually why that was the thing that caught my eye about the first cohort.
Sure.
Is that ceaseless vigil can go take a hike after round 1. I don't care about it, right? I'm not saying it wouldn't be neat that you can occasionally do that, but I've got other things I want Morghasts to be doing, right? Besides standing around Big Papa Nagash,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But in the first round, it is super good anti-Alpha Strike stuff.
Yeah.
The other ability in it, I don't care about. It's the thing you mentioned where you can he treats the D3 of that of Deathly Invocation as a 3. Okay, I mean, cool, but whatever. Can I talk about the most disappointing one?
Sure.
The most disappointing battalion?
Is it the keep one?
What's that?
Is it the keep one?
No, I don't think that one's the most disappointing. I think it's the Court of New Lamia. So the Court of New Lamia is Neferata, 2 or more Vampire Lords, and a Bloodseeker Palanquin. Right?
Yeah,
the new.
It's the vampire. It's not the Death Mage version. It's the vampire version of the Sacrament, Lord Sacrament.
Yeah, this is the Legion of Blood.
Yep.
Specific battalion or whatever.
Yep.
This thing is its abilities are so I mean, the only use of this thing is to consolidate drops because its actual abilities are just so uninteresting to me because of the units it contains. It's got Nephi, and sure, it could have your Vamp Lords of any variety.
Yep.
I'm not sure on the Bloodseeker Palanquin. I'm going to be completely honest. That thing has not sold me yet. I think Prince Vorderei can have a purpose in the appropriate army. Assuming he gets keyword fixed, because I think he's got a keyword problem right now. But I think he can be useful as the not general in an army.
As the sacrificial beast.
Yeah, as the other vamp. If you're going to run a dual Vamp Lord list, I think he could be useful. But anyway, that's probably a deeper argument. But the point is that this thing contains. I am not sold on that Bloodseeker Palanquin at all. And so, what are the abilities you get out of this awesome Legion of Blood? All right, first, when Nephi is within 9 inches of the Palanquin and targeting an enemy hero,
sure,
she can reroll failed hit rolls. Whoa, couldn't we write that as a more corner case? Couldn't that also be, and it happens to be a Tuesday? Are you serious? That is unbelievably specific for reroll hits.
Yeah.
1 character within range of another model and targeting a specific type of enemy model.
Sure.
That's raspberry all day right there. And then the Scent of Blood. At the start of your movement phase, units from the Court of New Lamia that are within 9 inches of the Bloodseeker Palanquin get to add 4 inches to their movement characteristic. Okay. Like I said, I do always like movement, but it's I guess my 2 Vampire Lords, probably on Zombie Dragon, are going to be real fast for a single turn. I guess that's cool. They can shoot way out there. It's not bad. I mean, okay. How much am I paying for this? It just feels so underwhelming. It was the one that just did not grab me at all. So
yeah,
that was my feeling.
For me, the alternative setup, coming from the keep one, a lot of people are like, oh, it's awesome, and you can flank, and you know what that is? That is 1 Fire Slayer unit away from never bringing those units on the board.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't disagree.
Anybody that can deep strike or Zinch summoning demons along the that's literally 1 alternative setup away from shutting off that entire board edge from bringing anything on.
Yes,
and there's tons of alternative setup now.
Sure.
Wanderers are they do what?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Wanderers are going to warp to that board edge and just string out along, right? And shut you off from coming forward.
No reinforcements are coming for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. But here's what I'll say. Okay, at the same time, fair. All right. But may I present an alternative to your issue with this and why it doesn't rate as poorly for me?
Okay.
That setup of that board edge setup is a may, not a must.
Sure.
In other words,
so like when you see that across the board, you don't deploy because you know you're going to get shut off.
yeah, exactly. Or you put like,
enough threat that they have to actually set up that way, and yada yada yada.
Yeah, exactly. And then as well, like the In the Shadow of the Keep isn't a terrible ability. I mean, it's not great, but it's just like it gives all of your Blood Knights, reroll to hit when they're within a certain area of the battlefield. Again, it's like you could pick their edge, right? Or the backside, like the backside of the board, especially in certain diagonal deployment scenarios. This actually could be really interesting to create a zone on their side of the board where you're getting bonuses and where you could march stuff on from. Again, like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I know. I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying it didn't strike me as much of like, I don't care. I mean,
That's
there
fair.
you go. So there it is. All right, we've talked about all of them. I think we talked about all of them. Yep, we definitely did not miss one. That is definitely all of them. There is none of them
folks.
that we didn't talk about.
Sorry, folks. There were no Mega Battalions here, which was interesting.
No.
It's a new design direction.
Sure. Do you want to talk about the actual spells at all? Because that's the other big thing we haven't touched yet. No magic.
I mean, their spells are good. Let me say that. Yeah, I'm interested to see. Kind of like they have great debuffs. They have good options. You're gonna want probably one of the death, like one of the Mortarks. Like you're gonna want a Death Lord probably in your list so that you can dip in, because most people aren't gonna have both types of casters. I mean, unless you're running like vampires and necromancers or something.
I'll tell you right now, I was actually really impressed with their spells. Like, I like these spells a lot. Okay, I really do. I thought that overall these were really cool. I mean, we should mention the Locus of Shyish. She got spoiled back in there.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the double spell.
Yeah. It's really important to understanding. I think you've got to think about that. And what that basically means is that, like, somewhere around I think it's 20 some percent, a little less than 25, 23% or something of your spells double cast, right?
Yep.
Because if you roll an unmodified roll of 9+ for a Death Wizard,
yep.
And it's not unbound, then after resolving the effects of that spell, you may immediately resolve them for a second time.
Excuse me.
Right?
Yep.
And what's really critical here is, and this is the one thing that when they spoiled this, they didn't spoil the rules text. They just kind of like talked about it. Yep. And what's critical here is it says, after resolving the effects against the target unit, you may then choose either a second target unit or the same unit again.
Yep.
Okay. And like, they're very clear that these things stack.
Yes.
Which is super good that you have that choice to make, because it actually is possible. Like, I was wondering about this when they kind of spoiled the rules thing, because I was like, well, am I forced to double tap that unit? Because, like, what if I'm doing a mortal wounds thing and I kill that particular unit I was targeting? Right. Does that then just go nowhere? But no, like, I can double tap the guy if I need to, or if I finish that person, I can then move it over to something else. Right. So I really like the Locus. And, like, unsurprisingly, I think these guys have amazing debuffs. Fading Vigor is the old sort of basically a dupe of the old Vampire Lord on Foot or whatever, his ability, right? Yep. Where you subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic of that unit's melee weapon. But also, and roll only a single dice when making charge rolls for.
Which is like backbreaking.
Oh my God. Like, that's just a little dangling sentence on the end of that. That is crazy. Jesus. Like, turning a charge. And by the way, it's cast on a 6.
Yep.
That's pretty good.
Who do you want to have a 33% chance to not get into combat with a 3-inch charge?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is, you literally made the point I was about to make.
I know.
Like,
I know.
yeah, when we generally set up at 3 engines and go, okay, cool, I'm good as long as I don't roll snake eyes. No. You're going to fail a full third of the time now with that unit. That's insane. And obviously, like, any mid-range charge is just straight out of the question. You ain't getting there. So yeah, like, Fading Vigor, super good. Yeah. At the same time, you've got things like Spectral Grasp, where you can hit a terrain feature, right? And then until your next hero phase, you have the move of enemy units within 3 inches of any terrain features affected by Spectral Grasp. What's interesting about that is that the terrain feature has to be within 18 inches. But think about how big some terrain features are.
Oh, yeah.
Like, think about, like, the War Scryer Citadel, right?
Yep.
Which just got released. You touch, like, one little end of that, and, like, the broadcast bubble of half movement that shoots off of that thing, right?
Well, or think about, like, a triple Sylvaneth Woods in the middle of the table.
Sure. Sure, everybody in there, that army. Like, it is an unbelievable molasses thing, whatever that, I don't know. You get what I'm saying. Like, that's a huge amount. And then, like, the combination of those two, where you're, like, moving at half speed and charging a D6, I guess you just don't get to participate in this fight anymore as you creep across the board.
Yep.
Yeah, I dug the crap out of that one.
Nagash is going to be scary.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, yes, there's, like, I'm focusing on largely the debuffs, but there are plenty of spells here that do damage as well, right? And obviously there's more spells that also subtract bravery. So again, if we're talking about, like, bravery bomb stuff, sure. You know, as well as just crazy swing for the fences spells like Prison of Grief, which has one of the tougher casts on a 7, but you pick an enemy unit within 12 inches, so much shorter range. But basically, until your next hero phase, before a unit affected by the Prison of Grief spell moves, roll a die, and on a 5+, they just don't move.
Yeah.
They just stay.
But let's be honest. Like, yeah, okay, it's a cast on a 7. This is not a Nurgle army.
That's a good point. A 7 in this army is a walk in the park. It really is.
Nagash is casting that on 2s.
Sure.
Arkin is casting that on 3s.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And then potentially 20% of the time you have a double cast and you're locking down 2 units.
Yep. And so, as well as, by the way, like, there's the Lore of Vampires one.
Yep.
There's I don't know how you say this one. Amethystine Pinions.
Yes.
Where you add 5 inches to the caster's move characteristic, and that caster can fly. Pretty cool. Again, like, you really can. Yeah, you really can make your vampires, like, super fast. I know I talked about it in the battalion, not being that impressed, but that's because I had to pay points for the battalion. If I can just select a random spell and suit myself up by 5 inches plus another 2 from somewhere else and and suddenly I'm shooting all over the board. Well, you know, okay, now I'm more interested.
Sure. When you don't have to pay points for it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it makes a difference when you don't have to pay points for it. But yeah, like, on the whole, I really liked their magic. I would say I liked the like, lore of the death mages better than I liked the lore of the vampires or whatever. I just thought I thought all in all I thought the lore of death mages really had some pretty crippling debuffs. So,
yeah, and basically you're going to need to run either a Death Lord for that or Necromancers, which are very squishy.
Well, I don't know, man. I mean, sure, they have, like, no save.
I mean, maybe you can pass off wounds.
They can pass off wounds. Like, they've got a pretty good quote unquote ward save. And they're often so irrelevant given the rest of this force.
Yeah.
That, like, you do, unless you're like some army that's just kind of, like, crapping out shooting everywhere, where you can afford to just like toss off a bunch of shooting at them and kind of pepper them.
Right.
Because you don't want to put a single powerful shot into them or something like that.
Well,
Because
the
again,
irony
50-50
is that
shot
being
just
that
gets
suddenly
wasted.
the Legion of Sacrament, like they are scary.
Sure, because you can just actually like really bunker those basic necromancers and make it that they just can't. They're just not going down.
Not only do you bunker them, and they're actually casting 2 spells around now with +2 to their cast. So they're actually like very functional casters and +6 range.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, overall, I really liked the magic. I didn't read any of it and think, oh, that's crazy.
Right.
I mean, some of these are really good. That Fading Vigor is like, it's really good.
Yeah. No, it is.
Like, I will tell you, like, completely honestly, I certainly, like, being that I'm about to run Iron Jaws in a tournament in a week and a half, I do tend to look at a lot of this stuff through the eyes of my orcs.
Yep.
And,
like what
like,
is it going to do to me?
Sure, and, like, I know what happens to my orcs when I lose attacks and suffer -1 to hit, you know, and, like, get these kind of crippling debuffs. That army falls apart, like, immediately. It just dies.
And we know that at least 3 Nagashes are going to Holy Wars.
I look forward to getting rolled just like some sushi, man. Let me tell you what, it's going to be pathetic. Be like all my orcs are going to be running around at like half speed, failing charges, making like 1 attack, hitting on 6s. It's going to be super fun. I can't wait.
I'll bet you're super ecstatic about that.
Indeed. You've read me well.
Because there's nothing you like more than not getting to actually hit things.
Yeah, than not playing with my toys. It's my favorite thing in the world. All right. Anything else we want to touch on here at the end?
No, it's a good book. The design team, the playtest team did an excellent job. Very clearly.
Yeah, I agree. Like, nothing jumped out at me as crazy. There's obvious. We'll get our FAQ soon. Because now we get the FAQ 2 weeks after the book comes out.
Yep.
Right. If you have questions, make sure you submit them to the FAQ community address. The like GW, I don't remember what it is. It's on the website. And make sure you submit those questions so that those FAQ things get answered. So if there's any hanging out, we'll see it turn around real quick. So I do hope they answer some of these. On the whole, I was really happy with it. Like, I think it has some scary stuff. I think it's a good contender in the meta. I really do. Yeah. I think there's going to be a couple different interesting armies people are going to be trying out of this force. And I really look forward to seeing kind of how they all go, right?
I'm not going to lie. When I was making those 1,000-point lists for Acon,
you wanted to put Nagash in there and some zombies, didn't you?
I did. I looked at doing a 4-drop Nagash, skeleton, zombie, and direwolves. like I looked at the numbers and I'm like, well, so what? So who's going to take down Nagash in 1,000 points? With him casting 7 spells, 20% of them, or 8 spells, 20% of them double casting. That it was, and I already have a painted Nagash.
Well, shout out here, by the way, to Doom and Darkness, who on his channel has 2 battles where he at a 1,200 point in a 1,200 point game.
Yep.
Or 1,250 or something like that, because he's practicing for Southern Assault or something, whatever it is. I don't remember the exact tournament. They do a small tournament as part of like an escalation series of tournaments. He took Nagash against 2 armies, and like Nagash just basically rolled around and killed the enemy armies, right? Like, because at like very low points totals, it becomes very difficult to remove him now. And it becomes very easy for him when he's throwing around 8 spells to just neutralize anything he wants to, right?
Yeah, and he does enough damage. And there's like healing spells. So of the 3 spells that he's gonna grab, he's probably gonna grab like the one that heals and like does damage all nearby units and heals him, and he's scary at low points.
Sure, it's super scary.
But I'm not gonna be that guy and show up with him at a 1,000-point game.
That seems like a pretty great army to me. All right, but I'm glad you're not that guy, Tom. That's nice of you. Somebody's going to be that guy, though. So for that guy in advance, congratulations to you. I look forward to seeing you just roll through people. It's gonna be. I want to walk through and just watch Nagash sweep across the table, like just the mist, just clearing it away. Anyway, all right, good stuff. I'd say yeah, super fun. I don't know if we'll talk about malign portents next week or not. We will talk about it sometime. Maybe we'll do. We might have to split some topics or something because there's a lot going on. But we will give it a breakdown. I'm excited for it. I just haven't had a chance to read it yet. I read, well, not all of it. I read like the first couple pages. So we will get to that. But as always, good breakdown. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Much appreciated as always. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Thank you for spending your a romantic evening with us discussing the Lord of Death. Like I said, don't forget if you want to send some real Valentine's Day cards to check out Chuck Moore's Twitter. I'll throw that'll be down below. You can go find the awesome cards that he made. He also posted them on Facebook in the Age of Sigmar Fans Network. So you can go check those out. Shout out to Chuck. So thank you everybody for watching. It's always appreciated. And of course, we'll see you next Wednesday.